Hey everybody, this is Justin Shaifer, also known as Mr. Fascinate. I'm a science communicator, STEM media producer.
I am Dr. Dakotah Tyler, Dr. Starkid on all platforms. I'm an astrophysicist. I study exoplanets, and I'm a science communicator. Thanks for joining us.
And on this episode of Curiosity Theory, we're going to be talking about what makes something alive, what what Afrofuturism means, and how we define complex systems in our world.
Expanding the definition of life. Do we know what life is? Is life even a thing?
Find out on Curiosity Theory in 2 seconds. You ready to rock, sir?
Yes. Rock hard.
Rock solid.
Rock hard water.
This is a callback.
Sponsor this episode.
Rock Hard Water is the sponsor of this episode. So, self-reproduction. This is interesting. All right.
Yeah, where are you going with this?
Reproduction is where we're starting this episode.
Okay.
And we're talking about one of the prerequisites for life, right? And like what makes a system actually living.
Like life.
Like reproduction is one of the prerequisites for living things.
Yeah, let's actually look up the definition of life. Okay. So NASA's working definition of life is a self-sustaining chemical system capable of Darwinian evolution. So this is already, I think, something that's rather specific and getting sort of hyper-centered around what we experience on Earth. And I think that there are, but I guess it's broad enough to include things like parasites and viruses, which do undergo Darwinian evolution. I think so. Viruses evolve.
Yeah, I mean, and how do we what's the difference between evolution and Darwinian evolution?
I think that they're used
the same
interchangeably here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it. Yeah. That seems reasonable. But okay. And I mean, in that case, there are other molecules that could be self-sustaining and capable of Darwinian evolution as well that aren't viruses.
I guess it says, so here's another definition pulled up. Distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic matter, including capacity for growth, reproduction, functional activity, and continual change preceding death.
Right.
Yeah.
Continual change preceding death. Continual change. But that's also pretty open-ended.
Right. Yeah. So this almost is defined in a way that I think it intentionally eliminates certain things.
Yeah.
Also, just looking at that capacity for growth, reproduction, functional activity, continual changes preceding death. I feel like this applies to ideas. This applies to philosophies. This applies to like a socio-economic, like capitalism is something that has a capacity for growth. It has the ability to reproduce, right? For a long time, there was this, the Cold War was about the battle between these two living organisms, communism and capitalism. And somebody who's more specific may describe that differently, but for the sake of this conversation, they were trying to reproduce themselves in other places, right? And this has been something that the U.S. has always done
through their ideology.
Literally, we literally will like topple other governments. We've done a lot of this in South America to try and install more instances to reproduce this thing that we have going on. Functional activity, of course, like this drives the mechanism, the structure, the way that our country works. Right. Continual changes preceding death. I feel like many systems could fall under this category, but most people would not say that something like a sociological or socioeconomic ideology is life.
Right. But with NASA's working definition, they talk about a self-sustaining chemical system. And I mean, I'm curious about why chemistry has to be the substrate upon which life is built. I mean, you could argue that even artificially created life would still be a self-sustaining chemical system if it's, these nanoscale robots, like they're still composed of chemicals.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I mean, everything's chemicals, right? I mean, what drives a society? Or is it not driven by chemical systems?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think that's an interesting way of defining that, and NASA even says it's a working definition,
Right.
so it's kind of actively evolving in
So
real
this
time.
reminds me of this book called Life as No One Knows It. I think I have it around. So it's actually back here. Uh,
Life as no one knows it.
Sarah Amari Walker book.
Let's see if
Actually,
I
once
can
you,
grab it.
yeah,
I'm
the
gonna
knocking
take. I'm
stuff.
gonna risk it all. Gonna risk it all trying to grab this. Yeah, life as no one knows it.
So
There it
this is an
is.
incredibly fascinating book from Sarah Amari Walker. She's a theoretical physicist and an astrobiologist. And in the book, she questions our definition for life. And it's, as we read, it's hard, it's something that's hard to define.
Hmm.
You ask different people, it can be defined in different ways. You take a very much accepted definition and you could squeeze something in there like um, you know, a an economic policy, right? You
Hmm.
can you can squeeze many things in there. I think if you think about something that requires chemical energy, metabolizes, has functional mobility, you could fit cars in there, right?
Yeah.
Cars, they move around, they're reproduced, they require energy to come in. They have some emissions that they make.
Yeah, and is it John Conway's Game of Life that is that system of the front by the Cambridge mathematician John Conway, where it's like you give these basically these blips on a screen, these three rules, and then they self-organize in a way that emulates life.
Yeah. Do you
Right.
remember what like the rules are? I don't remember what they
Yeah,
are.
I see. Conway's Game of Life.
So I mean, so I feel like this needs a little bit of context.
Yeah.
If you think about if we scale back our definition and like forget the inorganic or organic thing and just think of like a self-organizing system or a system that has to obey some rules and you push play, is it possible for like reproducible structure to emerge from that thing?
Hmm.
And in this game of life, you basically just take a huge grid, and there are some rules for the grid about whether or not the grid can be lit up. So it
Yeah.
can either be dark or it can be lit up. And there's like an overcrowding rule where if there's too many things lit up around it, it goes dark and dies.
Hmm.
There's an undercrowding, like an isolation rule.
I can read the rules
Oh,
too.
my bad. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first rule: any cell with fewer than two live neighbors dies. Right. And so this is, I mean, if you can picture this, and we can kind of
Yeah.
show
Maybe
like a
like let's
version.
try to illustrate it.
Yeah.
So,
So I can blow it up on my screen really quick so you all can see if you're
well,
watching
most
this on
people are
video.
just going to be listening to
But
this.
it looks kind of like a little Tetris game.
Just think of an infinite a grid with a
Yeah.
bunch of squares.
Yeah. In
An
2D,
infinite grid
in
with a bunch
two-dimensional
of squares.
space.
The squares can either be lit up or they cannot be lit up.
Right.
So
And if
try to
you're,
describe it because
yeah.
for the listeners.
Yeah, and so you can watch it here, but if you're listening, you see that there's these little squares, and they're kind of creating these new structures, and they're following these really specific rules. And so the first rule, like I said, is any live cell with fewer than two live neighbors dies, as if by underpopulation. Any live cell with two or three neighbors lives on to the next generation. So this is how like reproduction occurs, right? Oh, sorry, no, and any live cell with more than three live neighbors dies as if by overpopulation. And any dead cell, like a blank cell, with exactly three live neighbors becomes a live cell as if by reproduction. So that's when reproduction occurs, when it's like a blank, like in this use case, like a blank cell that is not filled in, like has an empty and is surrounded by three cells, then it becomes one with a square filled in. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So I think that this is going to be incredibly difficult to follow on as a listener,
Yeah.
but there's an infinite cell of blank grids of that are dark.
Hmm.
And based on these certain rules, and it's not really important what the rules are, a cell can become lit up, right?
Yeah.
And depending on what you start with, that can lead to what you could characterize as certain like species or certain types of objects that look a certain way and behave a certain way simply based on that limited number of rules,
Hmm.
right? Like if you start with something that is a weird combination of 8 lit up and unlit up squares in a certain configuration and you push play, it'll move across the board, and then if it encounters a certain type of other configuration, it can eat it, or it can die, or it can
can
produce some new thing,
can reproduce. Yeah,
right? And if
and
you're very, very lax with your definition of life, you could see this as some complex like system that grows, that honestly fills a lot of these requirements for
mhm,
life. In this book, Life as No One Knows It, Sarah Mari Walker, she paints this picture of life, potentially like a way to define it, is a place where you can have a high rate of occurrence of things that are incredibly unlikely.
mhm,
Like if the universe is infinite, there's a chance that over an infinite, well, actually, it's guaranteed to happen over an infinite amount of time. You will spontaneously appear somewhere
mhm.
with an infinite amount of stuff, infinite amount of time. It will happen
It's
at some
inevitable.
point. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Mhm.
It has to. Uh, so it's maybe not that weird that you appear, but it's weird if all the people on Earth appear in the same place,
Right.
right? And so, life is like maybe you could define, or you could think of, or there are things that happen on Earth that are not against the laws of physics, but that would never happen in nature. Like she puts that she calls it anti-accretion.
Mhm.
So accretion is this term that we use where like a star accretes material,
Mhm.
gets laid onto it. A young Earth was accreting material. Comets were hitting it, delivering water. Asteroids were hitting it. It was accreting mass.
Mhm.
But sometimes material that was on Earth, like raw materials, say, for example, ones you put in a satellite, they leave, like anti accretion happens. Now, you can't really explain that with the physics that we know, except in that there's something going on there, like the physics of life, which now can like understand the information that we call the laws of physics and can reproduce these events that wouldn't happen physically without something being there and that thing being life. And thinking about life as like a physical concept like that,
Hmm.
which is really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I definitely want to dive into the book a lot more too, because
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think I guess if multicellular, like I guess one of the things that the book postulates is about multicellular life being maybe more common, but like the fundamental building blocks of all multicellular life are these single cells. But what if each individual cell is so different? Like what kind of multicellular structures could possibly exist? And other places like that, where it's like literally the building blocks are different,
Mhm. Yeah.
or would they
This
become the same? Would there be a convergence that happens? Like just because the
Right, and
building blocks are
I
different,
mean, you can go even simpler than cells and think about molecules.
molecules, right?
What is the number of like small molecules that could exist potentially? And I think that
Yeah.
it's the number is higher than the total number of atoms in the universe, right? So like this means all of the potential molecules that could happen can't, because there isn't even enough stuff to allow that to happen.
Right.
And so yeah,
Yeah, the number it says the number of possible molecules is practically infinite, though a finite number can actually exist in the universe due to the limited number of atoms available.
right, the limit is the stuff in the universe. And then so like from that perspective, I think it does make sense to try to look at the assumptions that we have around life and say maybe we're being too constrictive, right?
Mm.
Maybe even saying that something like AI, these AI systems aren't living. Like maybe that is even too constrictive. Like maybe that should fall into the definition of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of makes sense for a lot of different things to fall into the definition of life, I guess. Yeah, ideologies have
Yeah.
their own, abilities to
Mhm.
be self-contained, reproduce, organize. Yeah.
This is and that I think that that's like a very very much a different, well, yeah, I mean we're human, so it's all based around like us, and then we like extend these bubbles out from ourselves and we're like
Hmm.
including more things. But I think that like systems just have a life of their own, and that's like an emergent property is that it wants to reproduce, it wants to grow, it wants all of these things. And in a sense you could think of the individuals like in the United States as being cells that all have their own job, but and may not even realize what role they play in the system as a whole. In the same way that like the cells in your kidney are not aware of the cells in your lungs,
Hmm.
but ultimately the system of your body needs all of this stuff to do its thing to propagate,
Right.
which is a wild thing to think about then as like humans as just particles in these other systems, and that life emerges in that way.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful concept. It's very powerful. Um, all right, so let's switch gears a little bit
No,
here.
hold on. But there's something else I want to say about this, I think.
Uh,
So, one of the other things that is often mentioned is is reproduction, the ability to reproduce,
mhm.
and like on your own. And so sometimes this is why maybe something like a virus
Virus.
would
Yeah.
not be considered, right? Because a virus needs other cells. And so then, yeah, like some people say that a virus isn't life.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a good example of us being a little bit too restrictive with the definition. But, there are these. Have you ever watched Last of Us?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that show.
Hmm.
And they're like building that off of this cordyceps fungus that infects the brain of an ant, controls it, makes it do something
Right.
so that it can like get eaten. And then
Propagates more copies of the
exactly.
virus. Yeah.
Well, that fungus, is that fungus not life? When did we stop saying fungus was life?
Right.
But it needs that other organism to reproduce. When the ant is being controlled, is the ant alive?
Right.
Are ants not living? Like, are they not life when that happens? It's most bees never reproduce. Are like worker bees not life? So you can see that the definition that there's too many living things that we consider living that don't even fit into that. I mean, what about a human, an old person
Yeah.
that can't reproduce? Are they not living anymore?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think about like egg and sperm cells don't reproduce on their own. Right.
Right?
Yeah.
If you found, yeah, like if you found, we went to another planet, you whipped out your microscope and you found a little sperms looking cell thing. Is that not life?
Yeah.
That sounds ridiculous to
All right.
me.
Yeah, but then it's kind of hard. Like, at what point do you broaden the definition too much, and then you're just incorporating
But
everything?
why? But like,
Is there
why? What do you mean though?
right? I think that's an interesting challenge, right? Because like
Hmm.
a rock is a part of a system,
Mm.
right? And maybe that system is on a geological time scale, and you know, I mean, you could like I think the interesting thing about the universe is that if you speed up the time or slow down the time, there's all kinds of things that seem like they're living.
Everything looks like life.
Yeah,
Everything looks like it's like operating in this way.
yeah.
And then an interesting question is, what is life anything? Is nothing life?
Or is
And
the universe
everything is
just
just sort of operating in that way.
yeah,
Well, yeah, that so this is one of the for me the fascinating ideas behind this book is it's that I think that we're like way too niche down in what we
hmm,
think life could be.
yeah,
So her prediction in the book is that the first life that we will find that is not Earth based or extraterrestrial will be created in a lab,
hmm,
like non. Which I mean, I guess that is still terrestrial because it's here, but that our first like non DNA, non evolved from the cells on Earth life will be created in a lab. And I actually think that there's a number of people that are working on like developing artificial life.
yeah. There's definitely like self-reproducing robots that have been designed, like xenobots. Is
That sounds interesting. Let's talk
yeah.
about that. I haven't heard about the xenobots.
Yeah, they're like this is like a thing that came out in 2021,
Yeah.
and these are like living robots that can reproduce on a small scale. But I wonder how far that science has come. It's been a while since that was published.
Yeah. So there was something, yeah, I don't know what I don't know what the study was. So maybe I won't even talk about it right now. But this is like research that is ongoing. I think people are trying to create.
Yeah, they create living things in a lab. I think there's many use cases for that. Like if you think of nanobots that are able to self-reproduce and deliver medication into specific organs in your body so that
Mhm.
you're maybe not as affected by something going into your bloodstream and it's infecting all parts of you. I think there's some really important use cases for having things that can emulate life in that regard. But
Mhm.
one of the other ideas
Well, I
is
mean, doesn't every single robot and AI system and LLM fall into that already?
like something that emulates life or it's something that
Everything, yeah.
reproduces.
I mean, how does ChatGPT not emulate life? That's literally what it's doing. It's literally
It's
emulating.
emulating conversation.
Yeah. Do you know anything else except for living things that can do conversation?
I mean, there's living things that can't converse.
Like what?
There's living things that don't like communicate with each other in like those kinds of ways,
I would still say that they communicate with each other.
not conversationally, like a
Well, not
chat.
using language.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
which is large language model
So
inherent in the term.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I would say that no, I think the thought I actually had when you were describing like different time scales, like things appear living, like this little simulation that we kind of showed a little bit of
Mhm.
on the screen. Like imagine an extra dimensional observer of our our universe, which I guess we couldn't call it a 3D universe, but like if someone was looking at our universe from the outside, if they could, right? And then they were on like a much faster time scale. Like
Mhm.
for 1 second for them was like a billion years for us. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining Curiosity Theory. If you want to support us, check out our Patreon. They would see all these patterns emerging, right? These galaxies forming and these like clusters of galaxies forming, and then like you see this rotation of these objects, and it would kind of like appear like this evolving system
Yeah.
over time, and it might look like life.
I mean, yeah. I mean, go back to that game of life, that if you just have some setup with things that obey a number of rules, here in this case it would just be physics, right? It's like
Mhm.
gravity, there's some things going on, there's some chemistry going on, then that can create things that seem to be alive, that seem like very organized and behave in a given way. So I think this is the study that I was thinking about. Came out of Harvard earlier this year, 2020, July 2025, where they engineered artificial cell-like chemical systems, but these are not biochemical
Mhm.
systems capable of metabolism, reproduction, and evolution. Um,
Hmm.
how is that not? I mean, that's almost something. I mean, to me, that sounds like it should be considered that life has been created,
Right.
even without getting very uh you know open-minded and broad with our definition. But you could always make the argument that, well, that didn't happen naturally because we made it happen.
And
But
what's natural? Yeah.
aren't we a part of the natural universe?
Right.
Like,
So then we're just an extension of nature, right? And what we create is an extension of what nature has created.
really? Like,
You could argue
really?
that.
There's like there's no such thing as a artificial, if you want to look at it that way. I
Yeah.
get what people mean when they say that.
Right.
But the laws of physics resulted in you and I.
hmm I mean, but maybe it's going to be one of those situations like as more of these kind of biotechnology innovations are come out and these research studies come out. Like maybe it's going to be one of those things where uh, you know our expectations get higher, and so the line that we have to cross to be considered living gets higher. I think of this like with AI and the Turing test and how we blew past that a while back, but that used to be like, oh, if something is sentient and fully self-aware and
Yeah.
conscious, like it's got to pass this test.
Mhm.
And now we're kind of like, AI is not any of those things, but it's
Yeah.
definitely passed that test.
Yeah.
So
And the posts keep
keeps
moving,
moving.
right?
Yeah.
And you just always end up in a spot where where people are just uncomfortable with calling something life that is very much different from basically what has happened on Earth already
Yeah. I think it's easy for us
naturally.
to think that we are special in
Yeah.
the universe.
Yeah.
Um, and it seems that science has a way of humbling us consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of um things being able to exist and be living, that are just that we're just like one type of life.
hmm
That sometimes you can get these we're like in the organic branch of life, but there are all different types of life.
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
Agreed. Let's
Speaking of fascinating, I don't have the real transition. I just wanted to beat you to it that time.
No, man. Okay, we can go. Oh, okay. We can completely switch gears. All right. So switching gears here.
Okay, wait, hold up, because we can cut this and
Yeah,
we
we're
can
gonna
make it
cut that.
a good thing. So I'm gonna say, you know, yeah. So I mean, it's just fascinating to think about life being these systems that we can't imagine, and that we sort of just zoom in and see these little gears that are necessary for the production of that thing.
Yeah, speaking of fascinating, man.
Oh my god, speaking of switching gears, speaking of gears, I
Look,
said gears.
well, yeah, no, it's fascinating too, though. There's this
I didn't say
story. You
fascinating.
did. You said it was
Oh my
fascinating at the
god.
beginning.
All right, we just gonna leave all that in there. You blew it. I was trying to set you up with the gears so you could knock it out the park.
So Elon Musk is working on this AI company called Macro Hard. I don't know if you heard about this.
Hmm.
It's kind of a play on Microsoft,
Yeah.
which it's kind of you kind of don't think about it that way as in like
I've
an
never heard anybody
innuendo.
say
I
Microsoft
was
like
saying that
that.
to make the point.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of an innuendo if you think about it that way, right?
Oh,
And then so Elon is creating Macro Hard.
suggestive?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And
Mm.
so Macro Hard is actually this AI enabled startup that is basically trying to be a direct rival to Microsoft, an AI enabled company that is doing everything that Microsoft does, just all with AI. And so I think it's an interesting
Yeah.
notion because it touches on this idea that, well, in if we're building these AI first companies, like, are we going to need these massive, massive super companies in the future, like these Googles and Microsofts, right? The FANG companies, um, or is there going to be a point where like just the size of these companies doesn't make sense anymore? Like all of that bureaucracy and complexity is just inefficient.
Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, I think that the the big guys are too big to fail in some ways, right? And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is not like anything could fail, right? Like back in the day, it was Blockbuster, right? Everyone was like, Blockbuster is amazingly big and it's never going to fail. And then along comes Netflix and like completely, like makes them washed up, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think anything is ever too big to fail like intrinsically, but I think the strategies of a lot of these tech companies is to, as soon as an innovative, like they have to move very carefully with innovation, right? Because there's a lot of guardrails around the things they do. They're liable to a lot of lawsuits, right? And so they can't always innovate as efficiently as these smaller AI enabled startups. But what they can do is let those guys do their thing and then buy them out for an amount of money that they can't say no to,
Mhm.
and then swallow up that AI infrastructure and then like open that up as like a feature in their tech products, right?
Yeah.
And so you see this happen all the time with like
Right.
Google, even though incubate entrepreneurs sometimes, like Google Drive and Gmail were all like byproducts of like these entrepreneurial ideas come up with by their employees that they then turned into like subsects of Google.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think that so yeah, I think that there's going to be some companies in the middle though. Uh-oh.
I dropped my
Oh, you
Aquaphor in my water.
excellent. Well, I guess that's not like the worst thing that you could have dropped in there.
Well, it's probably dirty.
Yeah, it's all good. Um, so yeah, I mean, but I do think these. I mean, we talked about this a little bit. Like, yeah, these smaller, leaner organizations are just going to be a bigger part of our future. But I think that yeah, but then there's going to be like companies in the middle who are maybe like not big enough where they can buy out competition, but also not lean enough where they're just super efficient and can pivot with all these changing times.
Mhm.
And those guys might be in a lot more trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think the same thing about schools. Like there's like the Ivy League educational institutions that have this great brand of education.
Mhm.
And then there's like the community colleges that are super affordable and they lower the barrier to entry to getting the education. But then there's this like expensive middle ground of institutions that are super expensive but don't have a big brand and won't really advance you in the ways that a lot of colleges do, that I think are really threatened by a lot of these advances in education.
That's really interesting. So we also, I think you see that also at the individual level.
Yeah.
We've talked about this on previous episodes where one of the best things that you can do for yourself now is be nimble, be able to learn new skills, work on new projects, master new tools quickly, and kind of move on to the next one. And that they're, yeah, like it's almost like the gig economification
The
of
gig economification.
the gig economification of like software development, right? Or something like that,
Hmm.
where you may not be in some places you already can't get in the entry level software developing jobs, and that maybe yeah, like what it's turning into is that you need to be able to get on an app on your phone and like build out this project in the same way that a night you may pull up Uber and go drive Uber, and that like puts like put taxis out of business.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
but it's
I that's it's like I think it's like good and bad at the same time.
yeah,
You're forcing people to be very reactive, very responsive, and very much like nimble and dynamic. And I think that's a lot of pressure to put on everybody,
yeah,
that like the more stable and traditional jobs are shrinking. And it's like if you can move quickly, and then that's good.
right.
But that's I think it's like a very unsustainable thing and unrealistic thing to expect everybody to be able to do.
And I think it specifically favors individuals with more neuroplasticity, right? Which is usually a function of age, right? Like the younger someone is, the more they're able to adapt, and their minds just can be nimble, and they can learn new things, learn new
Yeah.
languages, right? But as you get older, it's just tougher to like pivot, like
Yeah.
yeah. Even if
Yeah.
you're an open-minded person and like want to learn these new things, it's just like your brain is like physically harder as you're older. Like it's kind of interesting how that works.
Yeah. So this is so I think that that's a big problem. We've kind of seen that for a while, right? Where well, I mean, companies do this. They and it's illegal now. And then there's like some laws against ageism in a
Mhm,
company. But thinking of, if you think about the growth of, let's think of AI development and in that entire field and regime as an evolved form of life that popped out from the combination, from the interaction of like capitalism and the scientific revolution and the industrial revolution and the tech evolution.
mhm,
And like one of the
mm,
new little things that involved is the tech industry, and then now one of them is like this artificial intelligence. And that thing itself, like as it's evolving, it's selecting for people that are a certain way. So there's like this huge, it's like a living organism with the organisms inside. And one of the selection pressures is for people who are like quicker to think in that way. Well, you
mhm,
said I think a good way to think of it is age, for like younger people who can get used to this environment that's adapting so quickly.
mhm.
And that there are, yeah, like in this just super complicated thing that would for to understand it, you have to know the ins and outs and the history of all these different things, of like dozens and dozens of different fields, from history to economics to machine learning. Unrealistic for anybody to know all those things, but this evolutionary process is happening,
Mm.
and there's always selection pressures. That's very, yeah. And I think this is a fascinating thing to think about. Also, a little bit terrifying,
Yeah,
because nobody has a hold on it,
yeah,
or like an understanding of it. And when you talk about selection pressures that are selecting against, and I use selection in the like Darwinian sense, the
mhm,
way that an evolutionary biologist would talk about it.
yeah,
It's not that people are like looking at a resume and saying, "Oh, you're too old,
hmm,
like get out of here."
yeah,
It's that the system itself, it's like filters. And in evolution, you would say that certain things are just selected for.
right,
So it doesn't even need to be anybody making a decision.
like
It's
yeah,
it's just like what is produced, what work, like where's the survivorship?
right. And simultaneously, because of medical advances, we're living longer than we've ever lived before,
Right.
on average, and we're going to continue to live even longer. But perhaps some of the implications of modern regenerative medicine might have a solution for this. Like instead of looking at medicine as this, I don't know, like patchwork of solutions that kind of like gives you a temporary treatment,
Mhm.
like maybe finding ways to use like I don't know if you heard anything about the senescent cell research.
No, I've
Or
not heard of that. What is that?
so senescent cells are, and it kind of like is implied by the name of them. They're like older cells in the body that have reproduced many times that basically have like degraded DNA, right? And so these cells kind of accumulate in our body, and then this is like one of the symptoms of age. Like the people that are older just have a higher percentage of senescent cells in their body. So
Mm.
there was some research done on lab mice where they programmed apoptosis or cell death into the senescent cells of the mice, and they
Mhm.
lived like 2 to 3 times longer. But it wasn't just about the length of life that they lived; it was also about the quality of life that they lived. That they appeared younger, they were more springy, their metabolisms were faster. Right, by every way that we define youth today, like these
Mhm.
older mice exhibited those qualities.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by the prospect of, like older people being able to regenerate some of the qualities that they used to have and
Yeah.
maybe still remaining competitive.
Yes. So that is very exciting from from this perspective as like a person that ages and knowing people and and having family members that age and being able to cure disease and that sort of thing. But if we, to revisit this, very abstract way that we're thinking of life and systems, one thing, perhaps, that I would say could be an ongoing theme in societal and cultural evolution and biological evolution
Hmm.
is that, societies also progress over time. And, when we think of aging and dying, I think the biological reasons for like, oh, your telomeres are getting shorter and the cells are replicating worse is an obvious biological explanation. But something else that could be interesting to consider is how, on a population level, it might be important for us to die at that age. When you think of the overall health of a society,
Mm-hmm.
that if people get too old, they sort of like break some sort of equilibrium there. Does that make
Yeah,
sense what I'm
it
saying?
does. Yeah.
And it's like, well, what do we know about people as they age? They become more conservative. Um, I don't know. There's probably lots of other things. There's also probably lots of good things, right? People get older, they get more wise, they know more things, they have more experience.
Right.
They're probably much better at problem solving as well.
Yeah.
And as you extend that, what equilibriums are you breaking in these other huge systems that interact with each other?
Yeah, and I think that that's a common thing in more developed countries, right? Like this having an older average age, like in
Mm.
America and a lot of
And it
these
causing
Western countries.
issues
Right.
or unforeseen. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the more exciting things, and this is actually why I want to do a lot more travel to Africa, is because I know the average age in a lot of the countries in Africa right now is like I think the youngest, in all the continents on Earth,
Mhm.
right? So it's like a lot of mostly younger people, and there's a lot of innovation happening, a lot of new ideas being propagated, and there's a lot of young leadership, and
Mm.
in a lot of these African countries, and so things are just moving at a different pace. And this is mostly hearsay just from friends of mine that have been like fellow digital nomads, expats, and travelers.
Yeah.
And that these are the kind of things that they talk about. I experienced some of that in Southeast Asia, but I think that even there, it's a little different than Africa.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that is a very fascinating thing. I think that there's and yeah, and it's I mean it's hard to predict
Yeah, so Africa has the
the
world's
impacts of it.
youngest population. Around 60% of its inhabitants are under the age of 25. And yeah, the continent containing all the top 10 youngest countries by median age. So yeah, Africa.
Interesting.
Yeah, Africa's got a lot of young people. Like a lot of people believe Africa's the future. Obviously, it's a place where a lot of natural resources exist.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, tons.
yeah, and like again, it kind of excites me because one of the things that and I'm working on is the sci-fi anthology series, and
Mhm.
one of the topics we brought up a couple of times is Afrofuturism, which I think is a wide open kind of playing field for the imagination right now when we think of the black zeitgeist and what it's going to take to push the culture forward, right?
Mhm.
And I think Afrofuturism is one of those things that I don't know, like a lot of people make me just think of Black Panther, right? Like the Black Panther the
Not a
series,
lot of pop examples of that.
right?
Yeah.
And so and I think even less of them are fueled by science. All right, Octavia Butler, legendary science fiction author, right? She wrote about some science fueled science fiction, but even some of that kind of lacked, I think, the scientific rigor that we might be able to produce today.
Mhm.
So I think these young people in Africa are just an interesting case study as well. I could definitely one of those things, one of those places I want to travel to in the near
Yeah,
future.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be interested in that as well. Very cool. So do you have any yeah, the lack of like the lack of an impact of black people in a lot of sci-fi is is a fascinating thing to think about because in world culture, which in a lot of ways is American culture, that leaves a big impact. Not everywhere and not like ubiquitously, but it does. And in American culture, obviously, one of the main drivers is coming from Black culture,
Yeah.
which is interesting because I feel like you hear oftentimes people saying that Black Americans don't have culture.
Yeah.
Which, like, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
Right.
Obvious, yeah, of course we do, and
Yeah.
it drives the country's culture.
Yeah, and I guess that argument, which I disagree with, it comes from this premise of like, well, we were taken away from all that we knew, and then we were forced to basically digest this new culture and then build our culture on top of that. But I actually don't think that that's how it worked. Like, I think the ancestors that maybe came over from ships during slavery actually did know. Like they did pass down traditions and things and musicality and then like even some of the songs, the hymns that were sang during that time period have a similar rhythm and cadence to a lot of the African drums and things that are used.
Mhm.
And so that's why it almost feels like, I don't know if you like, Afro beats is now like one of the most popular genres of music. And a lot of that stuff still resonates with like that hip hop sound. And they
Yeah,
kind of mesh very seamlessly.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's that. See where you're coming from. I also think that it doesn't matter if there's any roots, whatever.
Hmm.
Even if in America, even if Black Americans had zero connection and zero like residual or propagation of the cultures from Africa, which isn't true. But even if that number was zero, there's still Black culture. There's still like a new thing that was made. There's a new thing that emerged. And yeah, so like any way you look at it, I think that like Black culture is extremely rich and like weirdly slept on and demonized yeah, but then at the same time there's lots of people who just demonize it.
Hmm.
So like what is it? Is there no Black, it's like only, oh, Black people have culture but it's just bad,
All right.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nonsense and like racism and that sort of thing that goes on.
Yeah, but I think that there's an opportunity for a positive reimagining of all of those things fueled by science.
Yeah.
And I think the prospect of that really that really stimulates my imagination.
Yeah, like
You know?
what? Give me some examples. Like, give me an example, or like something that you think of, or like what's a cool thing that you think would be cool, or like a fun aspect that you could expand on.
So, like one of the concepts I came up with a long time ago, as a few years ago now, and I worked on this with a few other people, was this idea of so melanin, right? So, what is melanin? It's kind of like this defense mechanism from like UV radiation, like solar radiation, right? And so, the more melanin you have, the more protected you are from the sun. Um, and so you can imagine in the future where this like ozone layer depletes, like more melanated individuals will just have more protection from the sun. And you can imagine a future, and this is all pure speculation, just to be clear, where like almost like a reverse colorism occurs, right? Where like, like these folks that are darker are revered in a different way because they're more protected from this modern environment that's like more exposed to solar radiation. And then like, how does that affect space travel, right? Like, would people that are more melanated, and this is actually a question for you, would people that are more melanated be more protected from the sun and the harsh environment of space, or does that make a difference?
Absolutely not. So
Interesting.
on Earth, most of the UV radiation from the sun, first of all, like you said, it gets blocked by ozone.
Ozone. Mm-hmm.
What gets through is still enough to give you cancer,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, which is why it's important to wear sunscreen. Now, if you go in space, you're now exposed to way more UV. Like most of it doesn't reach the Earth,
Yeah.
and still a lot of it does.
I always wonder how the astronauts are able to protect themselves.
Well, they're not
Directly exposed to the sun.
at all,
Right.
ever.
But through like the screen of their like the windows on the ISS.
Oh no. Well, like the ozone, like, that radiation is not. Those photons are not penetrating. The UV isn't getting through like a barrier, right?
Hmm.
You wear a shirt and go outside, you could get a tan line. It's not going through that physical material. But
Interesting.
in space, the the more dangerous thing. So I actually just saw. I'm glad you said that. I just saw this article about the effect on kidneys in space. So we've known for a long time that microgravity, low G environments are bad for the human body. Should make sense. We evolved for Earth. We evolved for 1G. Your heart doesn't work the same. Your eyes don't work. Nothing works the same in
Mhm.
space because we didn't evolve for that. And there is this like ongoing biomedical research and discourse around how do you keep humans healthy enough to go, for example, to somewhere like Mars. And what they found, this is fascinating, um, is that in mice, so they did this on mice, their kidneys were getting ruined. They were getting destroyed, essentially, degraded by just galactic radiation.
Hmm.
Once you leave Earth's atmosphere, you're exposed not just to more radiation from the sun, um, but just cosmic rays, radiation coming from everywhere in the galaxy that has been traveling, for however long. And when you're there, you're exposed. Yeah, like you're exposed to all of that.
Hmm.
And so, like, melanin's not going to help you for that. We don't have any. The Earth's atmosphere really protects us.
From the vast majority of it,
Yeah,
melanin is like a secondary form of defense. Would you say? Like on, but like only within Earth's atmosphere.
yeah, right. Well, it's
Interesting.
helping us against the UV rays that make it,
Right.
which
That are filtered through the
that
ozone.
are already being filtered, right?
Right.
And we also have a magnetic field, so charged particles coming from wherever are getting redirected as well. Once you leave Earth's magnetic field, you're also exposed to that.
Interesting.
So that there's melanin wouldn't help you there, but I do think that that's a really interesting component. So you could think of going to another planet that had like a different amount of ozone or something to where melanin was like absolutely something that did help you when you got on the surface of that
Interesting.
thing
So
and you
almost
you got out of
right. So it's almost like how in different islands like specialization occurs. Like this different planet would create an evolutionary pressure for like melanin to like
right.
everyone to become hypermelanated for
Yeah.
survival.
Now it would be odd that
That's
the
an interesting premise.
planet was fine tuned such that the only selection pressure on a completely different planet for a species that evolved somewhere else was melanin. Think that would be,
Uh-huh.
that's some yeah, like lucky that you arrived there. But
But
I
that
think
sounds
that
like a
that's
cool Afrofuturistic
mhm.
concept.
And then you could even think, yeah, I mean, you could even think about other things that weren't necessarily melanin
Melanin
based.
based, yeah. Because I
Hmm.
mean, the other thing about, I guess, like I don't know, like if we're just broadening this to Africa, like everybody in Africa doesn't have the same melanin count. Like all Africans don't,
Hmm.
aren't the same complexion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's super fascinating stuff. So I got a little synopsis of the thing I was talking about with the kidneys. And what they did is they tried to expose the mice and their kidneys to the amount of radiation that you would get over a longer period.
Hmm.
So, with mice experiments, it's always important to realize that a mouse isn't a human. So, it's you can't that's not always like a good proxy, but they exposed the mouse to 2.5 years worth of galactic radiation
Hmm.
and it caused permanent damage and loss of function.
Wait, but where were the mice at? Like, how were they exposed to it? Were they in the vacuum of space somehow? Like,
Let's
yeah,
see.
because I think because what you were saying earlier, like again, that's what I'm trying to understand is, if like solar radiation, that the photons from the sun aren't penetrating through these like physical barriers, and the mice are being studied within these physical barriers, then how are they being exposed to this galactic radiation?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, Simulated. So 7 of these simulations involved mice exposed to simulated GCR
Yeah, how do you even simulate that radiation?
doses equivalent to 1.5 to 2.5 year, which is kind of like what a mission to Mars would be,
Hmm.
mimicking that amount outside of Earth's magnetic field, which does not give you protection from cosmic rays like
Hmm.
um, charged particles coming from at really high speeds from all over the place.
Right, and those can get into the barriers of like ships, like reinforced windows and things like that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, totally. Uh, a particle like that would like rip through you. Well, okay, think about this. When somebody gets radiation sickness from like a nuclear meltdown,
Hmm.
what's actually happening?
It's like a bunch of particles that are really tiny that are like ripping through them, right?
Literally,
Yeah,
and causing structural damage in your body. Like,
yeah,
yes, tearing like little
like
bullets that are
little bullets.
tearing
Yeah,
through you. Right? And it's like not it doesn't leave a large bullet hole. It leaves something that's like much more insidious. It like makes all of these countless of these like micro tears just destroying the things in your body. Yeah.
Right.
And in space, you're just exposed to more of that. It's like that sort of thing.
Right.
It's not exactly the same.
Got you. So I guess you could think of the vacuum of space as mostly a vacuum, but like it has all these little bullets flying around, like very, very, very tiny bullets
Yeah.
flying around from all kinds of events that happened all over the place.
Right. And it's possible that one doesn't do any damage when it hits you,
Yeah.
but you just increase that number. That's why there's like a safe level of radiation,
Hmm.
right? Like the Van Allen belts. There are these belts that are a consequence of the Earth's magnetic field and charged particles. Mostly they come from the sun that get trapped in it, and you have to pass through that Van Allen belt to get to the moon.
Hmm.
Well, you don't want to like post up and live there in
Right.
an orbital habitat, but if you cross it for in a relatively quick amount of time, whatever it is, maybe it's like 90 minutes, maybe it's a couple hours, and it's like you definitely increase the risk of getting hit by one of these
Hmm.
particles, but as long as you're not there for too long, then it's okay. And it's like the more time that you're exposed to that radiation, the more likely that you're going to have long lasting damage. And
Interesting.
apparently, 1.5 to 2.5 years is too long for mouse kidneys. I would suspect that it would also be too long for human kidneys.
Right. And how long is an average trip to Mars if we were at the like
The
the
closest
closest
point,
point?
I think the closest is I think the closest is 9 months,
Hmm. Hmm.
but something like that. 9 months, a year, and then you'd have to wait a while for things to line up like that again.
Right. Yeah. It says maybe like 6 to 9 months depending on the spacecraft's propulsion.
Right, the speed that you're going matters. So
Yeah.
if you can, there's like this trade off in space where you can either like pack on a bunch of fuel, but that just makes you weigh more.
Hmm.
You can use gravitational assists, but that means you need to get timing for different objects. I don't know, like maybe you would leave the Earth and try to use the moon to get a gravitational assist.
Hmm.
But if you're going to Mars, it's like there's nothing else in between us.
Right.
It's not like you could swing around Venus,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. So I mean, but yeah, I guess you just don't want to spend too much longer traveling. So like
Yeah.
going to Jupiter or Saturn would probably be, or like Europa, I guess, would probably be less ideal.
Oh yeah. I mean, you'd be there, you'd be out there, you'd be exposed for years.
So something else I was always curious about is, we sent all these spacecraft and space probes out into this like expanse where they're being inundated with solar radiation, and like does that radiation ever damage their components? All right.
Hmm. Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I guess they're constructed in a way that must protect them, but we have the Voyager probes, um the Voyager probes that have left the heliopause. So they're like
Yeah,
outside
like
of what
way
we
out.
consider the solar system.
Yeah.
And they're still communicating. One of them is, I forget which one,
Hmm.
still communicating. And it takes, is it like days for a signal to get back? How far away is uh how far away
Well, yeah. While you're looking that up, yeah,
Voyager?
space probes definitely can get radiation damage, apparently, and this does cause a challenge for space missions. Sometimes it affects their equipment and things like that.
But typically, though, it seems like the things work for a pretty long time and
Yeah.
kind of as expected.
Right. Yeah, and then there's like radiation hardened
Yeah.
components and
I
shielding
mean,
that these things are built
a
with.
neutron flying through the Voyager 1 and a neutron flying through your heart, it's probably do a little bit more functional damage to you.
Right. In theory, yeah, it's just like a really, really tiny thing.
Mhm. Okay, so right now, Voyager, early 2025, Voyager 1, 15.6 billion miles from Earth.
Dang,
Takes about 23 hours for a one-way light signal, right? So
that was the
at the
first
speed of
Voyager we
light,
sent out.
Voyager 1, yeah.
Yeah, 15.6 billion
It's
miles.
very far. And it's been traveling since it was like the 70s.
Yeah, that's crazy,
I
man.
think it was like the late 70s, 77 that it was sent. And so yeah, like you send a signal and it takes 23 hours to get to it. And then, the information it sends back take 23 hours at the speed of light. This is mind-blowing to me
Yeah,
that they made something in the 70s that's still functional with a computer that is so many orders of magnitude weaker
right.
than your cell phone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, based on Moore's law, yeah, we're so much more powerful today with
But that's so
cell phone
impressive
technology.
though to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, and we were impressive back then What are we gonna do in 2077? You know.
Yeah. Who knows?
So what you thinking, man? I think we might be close to wrap.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to tag on?
Oh, I wanted to talk about robotheism, but I feel like that might just be a whole nother rabbit hole.
Could put that on the next one then.
Yeah. And on that note, we are wrapping up the episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in.